Hello and welcome to the Career Coven, the podcast for serious careers with unserious chat. I'm Beck, a coach, corporate citizen and recovering perfectionist.
And I'm Annie, a workaholic, slowly learning boundaries. And in each episode, we unpack career challenges and workplace wisdom through honest conversations, practical tools, and a healthy dose of real talk, so you can thrive on your own terms. Let's get into it. Beck, how are you?
How am I? I am good. I am nearing the end of my coaching course, which I have really enjoyed, but I now feeling like it was maybe kind of an insane decision to do a training course on maternity leave. I'm feeling that pressure, which
You've done extraordinarily well.
thank you. I feel really tired. I wouldn't recommend to other people to do what I did.
Yeah, I think it was very ambitious, which is unsurprising from you, but also just a lot.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. Today's topic is on values. Ambition is definitely one of my values, but I really pushed that slightly too far.
Good to recognise that. You've learned.
Great awareness.
Good. I've got a nice little vermouth and tonic in my glass today.
Oh,
So always nice to have a quick drink when recording this delightful episode. How am I? Well, the main wedding looms closer, and I told myself basically every day in the last 6 months that I will get onto my wed-shred, but I'm starting to believe there won't be a wed-shred for Annie. There will just be a wed-dread. And then I'll get there and I'll have a great time, and I probably won't look as good as I thought I was going to. But honestly, how bad can it be? Like, it's just going to be a fun day, you know?
I honestly, as someone who did wed-shred, I wish I was the kind of person who was slightly more evolved and body positive and being like, you don't need to wed-shred, just do whatever the fuck you want. That's the take I'd wish I'd had. So drink your vermouth and do what the fuck you feel like. It's everyone looks hot on their wedding day. It's the hottest one will ever look in their life, I'm pretty sure. So what's a few bits and bobs here and there?
Yeah, I just think I got unrealistic goals in that area. I was like, I'll look like a completely different person. I'm going to look literally 15 years younger. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, you're just going to look exactly the way you look every day. But yeah, on the topic of my looks, which isn't the topic of today because it's on something much deeper, but I think it is important to let everyone know, including you, that I am losing my hair. I've got these really clear bald patches, which is actually the main wedding concern, is that I have the hairline of an 85-year-old man. However, you just got to live it, haven't you? There's not much I can do now about that. It's gone. I don't know why it went. But yeah, experiencing a bit of hair loss.
Well, I didn't notice. I think you can style it out if that feels like a problem. As someone who has gone through postpartum hair loss,
I was going to actually ask, have you experienced that?
I did, and my temples looked basically bald, and I was like, "Oh my god, my hair's never going to grow back." And then it started regrowing, and it looks like
baby hair.
Yeah, can you see these ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. It comes back, don't worry. But just also, I reckon you could just put a bit of eyeshadow, like brown eyeshadow in there or something. It'll be fine.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not going to come back. So yeah, just gotta live on that one. I think there's a way that, yeah, I can hide it, basically. Susan's crying. So in case any of the listeners can hear that in the background, that's also something that's going on for me right now. But otherwise,
Susan crying, not Annie about her hair.
no, yeah, it's not just me slowly moaning, just imagine if I did start doing that though. Anyway, but otherwise I'm well. I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Shall we get into values?
Yeah, let's do it.
Come on, tell us from your coaching, what are values? I'm actually expecting you to teach me a thing or two after this coaching course on values. So tell me, what are they and why do they matter?
So I actually haven't really researched this episode in a classic, just doing an off the cuff blah 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 about this topic. I think in terms like values are actually really important. That was me being really flippant. I often think it is easier to identify them when you rub up against them in a scenario. I think If you were to just randomly come up with some values, you might not come up with the right answer. And I think the answer could change over time. But I would generally kind of think of them as components or characteristics that are most important to you. And I think the important part there is around your drive and your motivation and what kind of feels right to you. And this is like such a personal question. They also, if I had been bothered to sort of do a basic research on a definition of values, I'm sure there'd be like a second clause to the definition, which is about ethics. I think ethics do come into it. You know, I think when people talk about their values, I think most people as a baseline would hope that they're ethical. You know, something around integrity. Although saying that, like, there are people at work who don't have integrity. Not that I've worked with necessarily, but, you know, there are chancers and cowboys and cowgirls and all those things. So I think ethics it is a kind of angle in, but it's perhaps not the central part of values. But I think knowing them and working in a place that aligns with them and work where you feel supported in your values is what makes you really enjoy a career. And when that is not in place, it can go really badly.
Yeah, it can.
We've got like quite a few classics who talk about values. We've got, you know, Brené Brown,
The icon. The
the
icon it
icon.
is.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a couple of Brené books. Do I think they're the best things? I don't know. A lot of people really like her, so I don't want to question her outwardly in public because that will result in.
I think you shouldn't. I think let's cap that. I've only read one, Daring Greatly,
Okay.
and I loved it. Of course I loved it. She spoke to me deeply. I think it was before she got like she was big for sure, but obviously now she's like massive and everywhere and everyone quotes her on everything. Which I think is a bit boring, isn't it? But I did really like that one. Yeah, but she talks about values a lot, living your values, doesn't she? Being authentic.
Yeah, she strikes me as someone who is extremely high on the EQ scale, so I would kind of trust her on this one, particularly in a leadership context as well. That feels really important. You have he's like the male version of Brené Brown,
Yeah.
Simon Sinek. Start with Y.
And I
Um,
think he came first. Not that it's a competition, but I do think he probably did come first.
yeah, that I feel like that Five Whys video of him like in a little office room with a flip chart is like from 2005 YouTube or something. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And I've like because I'm now married to a total bro. And his like copies of Start With Why are like pretty old. They look like they're like maybe 20 years old and he was reading them when he was 10. So I think this guy's been around for a while. It is so pathetic that I actually can imagine Anders reading Start With Why when he was 10.
oh, he's such a good little egg. But yeah, obviously for the uninitiated, Start With Why is really about kind of purpose driven work and understanding and getting to the heart of something, and that being the kind of center from which you build out. And then, you know, I think actually there's a really interesting generational point about values. Millennials and Gen Zs are more likely to be seeking the type of work that aligns with their values. And I think that is more true for our generation and Gen Zs than it is for the older workforce. Not to massively generalize, but Deloitte said it, so it must be true.
Yeah, and that's because I think one of the reasons, right, is that like just having a normal job now, it like doesn't get you a house and it doesn't get you it doesn't get you as much as maybe like a 9 to 5 used to be like the key to kind of just stability, whereas now a 9 to 5 is not necessarily the key to like lifelong stability. So people therefore don't want it to be mundane.
I heard something really interesting the other day.
Go on.
I don't even know if there would be a way to fact check this. So just everyone take this as a speculation rather than fact.
I was going to say the opposite. Everyone take it just as fact. We can't check it. Just take it as fact.
I listened to it on a news podcast, so
Okay.
it's plausible it's correct that there is a correlation between how much you get paid and how harmful the work is that you do. Like
Ooh.
at a kind of I know, right? That was
Okay.
punchy. That
God,
you're
that's miserable. But I would believe it if it were. I would believe that. Like, I bet.
I think that's the example that they used in that was like, like the tobacco industry, for example, like, no naughty things.
Yeah.
But,
Like, a drug dealer is probably pretty wealthy for the amount of work they actually do.
yeah, well, I have to do a digression onto, have you heard of a guy called Rutger Bregman, the author? You will have heard of his books and or seen his latest book advertised. So he wrote Utopia for Realists. He's like a Dutch historian turned like basically center left or left icon in economics. God, I actually sound like Anders now.
Like, it's surprising, but we're going there. Let's go.
It was on a podcast that he was on, The Guardian's, I think it's called like Today in Focus or something. Anyway, he was basically talking about the evils are like corporate finance and lawyers. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, good to be married to one of those. Sorry,
Lawyer,
Rutger.
that surprises me of like all, I mean, like, I would have thought there's worse professions than lawyers.
Yeah, but I guess if you're like a really wealthy lawyer, you probably represent all the bad guys.
And we do want Tom to be a really wealthy lawyer, unfortunately. So, oh dear.
But I am going to tie this back to values. I heard this fantastic snippet. I'd never heard of it before. So he wrote Utopia for Realists. His latest book is Moral Ambition, which is on my one read list. Like, sounds really cool. It's basically like all of the really smart people who have been sucked into consulting and finance and stuff, like, just quit your jobs and do something fucking useful, rather than like the talent suck into these high paying
He's
jobs
horrible. Yeah, yeah.
could be redeployed to solve world problems. This is the kind of narrative of the book.
I like that. That sounds good.
I love that too. I can't wait to read it. He gave a speech at Davos in 2019. So he was there promoting his first book, Utopia for Realists. He'd done a number of sessions throughout the week where he was getting like increasingly annoyed. And then he basically went to because everyone's sort of talking about like philanthropy and solving the world's problems, and it's like rooms full of like billionaires. Let me read out what he said. So he went to his room and he just got so fucked off that he like wrote a little speech and waited until he was on like a recorded panel. It completely ignored what the moderator had asked him and just went on this whole like anti-wealth rampage. So let me read this out. He told his audience that people in Davos talked about participation, justice, equality, and transparency, but nobody raises the issue of tax avoidance and the rich not paying their share. It's like going to a firefighters conference and not talking about water. And he basically he basically fucked off like every billionaire
In the world.
in the world. They all go to Davos apparently. Hope you get a nice beanie. But, I think this is such a great example of someone like really living their values and
Yeah.
just being like, oh, fuck this. I'm
Yeah.
telling you what's going on. So that's my digression over. What do you think about values, Annie?
I think that I live a very values driven life, I think. And that's because I hate doing stuff I don't care about. But it actually took me a long time to identify what my values were and why certain things annoyed me as much as they did. And I think, you said in the kind of intro to this is like that it's easier to identify what they are when actually, you're like rubbing up against them. And that's certainly true for me. I think the kind of first, I don't know, 5 to 7 years of work, it was very, very ambitious and stuff, but like some things that people would do would just make me like unhinged levels of like annoyed. And it was only when I first had some coaching that someone made me sit down and do a structured values exercise. That was like, what, and you've probably got the actual exercise or something, but it's like, I remember it was like a huge list of words and it was like, pick 5 or 10 or something. And, a lot of the words resonated. So the challenge was like, pick 5 of these. And I think I definitely remember that like humility was one, and like fairness and equality was one. And obviously like there's some sort of kind of drive thing there. Maybe it's ambition. But doing that tool really helped me because then for when I got a new job or when things went wrong at work, it helped me be like, why am I particularly so annoyed about this thing? Like, I wasn't annoyed about that other quite annoying thing yesterday. And it is usually when something gets me really kind of G'd up, it's usually that one of those kind of 5 major values have been kind of, I don't know what you'd say, like, it's not crossed a value, but they've been awakened or something. And I felt that something is like very unfair or very unjust, or like someone has acted with like zero humility. And yeah, it helps me. Obviously, I think workplace values are a bit like, sometimes, they're just bullshit, aren't they? But you can interview for values, and I think when I spoke to Claire in the last series, she made some really good points about workplace values and how to identify what they actually are, regardless of like what's written on the wall. But yeah, if a workplace's values like resonate with one of my core 5, then I'm like, okay, that's good. There's something in there. So anyway,
I mean, your values are going to make me sound like an arsehole now because I don't have those really nice other-centered characteristics.
I'm sure one of mine was like, I'm great or something. Like, my value is that I'm the best. But there was definitely the only ones I stick out always remember were humility and equity or fairness. Because I had no idea that fairness mattered. Like, I would not have identified that without this exercise. I just didn't, but it definitely does to me.
Yeah, I mean, so make sure we've got a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to do an exercise, but it is a really good thing to do. I've also seen it done through different lenses. So you have your kind of overall values, but your values might be slightly different depending on, is it your values at work or your values in your relationships or values for yourself? So, like for me, in the self category, I'm pretty sure I've got authenticity, joy, and self actualization. And then in my relationships, it's about connectedness and things like that. And in work, it's about basically just being a feminist who wants women to get promoted. But, I think it's like we should start a podcast to help women get promoted or something.
Specifically aimed at that specific value. Yeah.
But it is, I think, such a worthwhile thing to do. I do think they also change over time. I think I used to value progression more than I do now.
Interesting.
And I think I'm 100% confident if I were to do this values exercise at the end of mat leave, they'll be really different again. So, like, just in a life transition stage, I think it's important to know that. But, I think there will be anchors. Like, fairness will probably always be a value for you that comes up. That feels like one that won't slip. That feels really core. But yeah, I think identifying it is particularly useful. I think for me, there was a place where we can come on to the next section, which is just about like navigating values misalignment. I did work somewhere once where I won't name where because that doesn't feel professional, where something like I thought was unethical was happening and I raised it as unethical and no one cared. And I was like, well, I actually can't do that. Like, I would rather not have a job than continue to participate in this thing that I really don't agree with. And like, is there an alternative when that happens?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on the level of misalignment, right? So with that, it's like huge. You're like, this is a serious thing. I'm effectively like whistleblowing it. And all of you are being like, whatever, like, we don't care. I personally think that's kind of too big to ignore. It's like, if they really don't acknowledge it like at all, then yeah, probably it won't last long. I've only worked one place where my boundaries with the organization and particularly the C-suite my values were very, very misaligned. But my values with my manager were quite aligned.
Yeah, I suppose like what is helpful in deepening your own knowledge about your values is that you come equipped with a language and you can point to specific things and reasons as to why you might be reacting or feeling triggered. And you can do something with that information if you understand it. But if you don't understand it, you'll probably just feel like a piece of poo and confused and demotivated.
Yeah. And in fairness, I remember like when I did this values exercise, I was seeing that coach because I wanted to get promoted, but there wasn't really a role to promote me into. So it was like, what's the role you want? And I didn't the role I wanted wasn't really on offer. So then it was like, let's find another role kind of thing. And yeah, I think in that scenario, had I not been able to identify my core values, and for example, I thought it was really unfair that I was not being promoted because I was working so hard and I was performing really well. But from their perspective, I was not being promoted because they literally didn't know where to put me, how to promote me. It was a very small organization. To be honest, it's like quite young leaders, and they were just kind of like, we want to, but we don't know. And then that annoyed me more because I was like, why don't you just recognize, like, I'm great and just give me everything I want? But once I kind of recognized that, like, fairness was this, like, very strong thing, I was like, oh, I'm reacting to this because I think it's unfair that you haven't just naturally recognized me without me asking. Whereas actually, from your perspective, you actually just haven't thought about your own org chart enough to know how to do this. And then, and then I did get promoted and it was completely fine. But yeah, I think that I wouldn't have been able to do that basically without that awareness.
Yeah, I think it becomes a really good to communicate and understand and action and kind of make the change that you're looking for. I wonder actually whether when we're talking about values, it's sort of much harder when there's a sort of grey area of whether you're not sure if something is kind of crossing your values, or let's call it a soft misalignment. So this one I can say, I felt like when I worked at Condé Nast, like it was a cool job in a cool organization with cool creative people, but I ended up leaving just because I was like, I don't want to work just to make a rich family richer. And like there was nothing sort of wrong per se with that organization or that role, but that wasn't sufficiently motivating for me alongside all the other things to make it feel like it was a worthwhile endeavor. And that's like I've basically been in Goldilocks porridge of media organizations, and I've got to the right temperature of porridge at the BBC, where the work that I do funds journalism overseas that I think is the right kind of journalism, and that kind of is what I hold on to as my anchor point for my job now. Even though if you were to look at it with slightly less thoughtful eyes, you could just be like, you sell advertising, which is true. You can do both, but you can do both.
You can do both, exactly. And I think it's not just everything's got depth, right? It's not just like as simple as, yeah, you sell advertising and what's that? It's like, yeah, who are you earning money for? What are you doing? What is the end goal of like all of this capitalism, basically?
Are we joining Rutger's bandwagon?
Indeed.
Okay, let's talk about something that I think we will both probably have the same view on, but values from a workplace perspective. Organizations that had values. Is it important? Is it meaningful? Is it bullshit?
Yeah, look, I think it's mostly bullshit. I think it can be really, truly meaningful. I think it's just all about how they are implemented and lived every day. So I won't use where I currently work because I actually am not sure I know all of the values. So I guess that's that. I know one of them is we care, or we care very deeply. And actually, I do think that one is really lived like throughout the organization in a way that you sort of can feel, but I can't remember the others, so I won't talk about that. I think that in the tech world, it's like part of like how you start your startup is to like define your values. And it's kind of the bullshit law. And it's when I was talking to Claire, it's like, actually, that's not, you can do that at the start, but that is fucking pointless because you don't know who's going to work for you. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to go through. And ultimately, what she said, which I agree with, is like workplace values are actually how you deliver things day to day. It's like how the work gets done. How do you treat each other when the work is being done? It's not like, I don't know if you can set values in the way that tech startups kind of want to, of like, we will only do this.
Yeah, I can't say that I can recall any of the values of any places I've ever worked, including my current employer. But to be fair, I'm on like month 7 of mat leave, so
Yeah,
they'll
we'll
cut
forgive
me a
you.
break for that one. But I can't remember any of them. I don't tend to feel like this work ends up being particularly impactful, if I'm being really honest. And I'm so sorry to the HR professionals listening. And if anyone does know how to do it well, like genuinely, I'm so ready to hear it. But just in the places where I've worked, I can't say that I've ever felt the values or felt a change. I wonder, like, am I conflating values with culture? I'm not sure. Like, culture, you can get a sense of, right? Like, culture kind of happens irrespective of what you put on the poster, almost like its own beast
Yeah,
that
yeah, for sure, and it's moving picture.
yeah, and I feel like I have, for the last at least like 2 or 3 jobs, definitely chosen employers based on culture for sure. Culture is super important to me, but I don't know that any of them have done values work that I've recognized, or maybe it's so nuanced that I've never seen it. But
That's kind of funny as a thought. The values work has been so nuanced that we actually must not let our employees know that this work has even happened.
it's so subtle. It is in the atmosphere of our air conditioning. Yeah, so like I can't say hand on heart that this has ever felt meaningful. Or I mean I've also observed in other places, not where I've worked, where values get basically referred to as a backstop when something bad
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, yeah, no, that definitely happens. That's happened everywhere I worked.
Those types of things tend to be the only time I ever see them come up. So like are they just a backstop? Like, or does that sort of soften or provide more context or a narrative? Like I'm sort of not overwhelmingly convinced about values, I guess, in the workplace beyond like whatever basic human social contract values, like respect someone, don't harm someone, listen, you have 2 ears and one mouth. Like what else?
That would be, imagine if that was on the wall. Listen, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Like, imagine if you walked into a workplace and that was there. I don't know if I'd actually be, like, completely put off or, like, actually quite love that. Shut up. Listen. Yeah. So other ways I have seen values be used in much smaller companies is like we interviewed at lots of the places I work. We interviewed on values. There's a values interview. There's very structured values. I am currently performance managed on the values, which
Interesting.
yeah. So I recently went through a performance review cycle, and I was quite surprised that it was actually all values based. And I
Wow.
yeah, and I was like, I don't think I'm a generalist, so I don't think I have a hugely high spike in a certain skill. But I was like, to not comment on skill whatsoever in this is slightly concerning to me.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's got, and I guess like the intention was probably to like hit on skills through like good values based feedback. But I was like, that doesn't work for me because I actually, when I'm giving the feedback, I do need space to talk about their functional expertise because they might be fucking brilliant, but an absolute. And honestly,
I also just like feel like the whole our workplace is our family thing,
yeah,
which feels like a sort of extrapolation of what you just said. Colleagues, we don't, I totally agree with you. Like, we don't have to see eye to eye as long as we're sort of treating each other nice enough.
yeah, with respect.
Yeah.
I think one thing on just last point on workplace values, I would say they also it feels like they had this like moment. And that moment was when, it was like 5 to 10 years ago when it was really like, oh my God, like what are their values? Have you asked them about their values? And like, blah, blah, blah. And now it almost feels like a luxury as the economy collapses and like, things have kind of never been harder maybe for businesses. It kind of feels very luxury to like go on an offsite and talk about your values being lived. So I think it's like boom time thinking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. It's you don't want to be putting a long agenda about values together when people have been made redundant.
Exactly. Yeah.
I totally agree. I also think like there's like you can talk about values if you want and you can put them on a little PDF and put them on your website and whatever. But when push comes to shove, like lots of companies have taken like absolutely abhorrent stances on like DE&I stuff because of Trump. And you're like, where are your values now?
Yeah.
Like that says everything that you need to know about it. And like you can say whatever you want, but if you're doing something totally different, then it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Totally agree. Could not agree more. Okay. So, how do you show your values day to day in your work, Beck?
I've sort of forgotten how to work if I'm
You
being honest. How do I show my values when I work? So if I go back to like what my what my values are and what's important to me, like there will be when you work with me closely like joy in the workplace, like that I for me it's so important that I enjoy my time together. I have joy with my colleagues. Even if you're doing the world's most boring project, it will still be fun to do.
Yeah.
And like that's actually an important part of like I just think we should like what the fuck are we here for if we're not enjoying it? So I like that's what it will feel like to be like on a project with me. Like we're on the same team. It's gonna be great vibes. And if it's not great vibes, then we'll make it great vibes. You know, you want to be in the club,
Yeah.
having a great time. So I think that really comes through. But I also think, you know, I really like independence as one of my values. And so as a leader, I also want to allow my team to have independence in doing what they're doing. And, you know, that can manifest as not micromanaging. Treat yourself, great leadership skill. But like I will let people kind of go off and do their things and discover what they need to discover by themselves and then come back and like we'll talk about it. But I think it's just quite important for people to own their journey and exploration and that kind of stuff. What about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's something about like laughing through pain that I think like to choose to work somewhere that isn't established, it's like a risk in itself, which brings like a lot of exciting, fun stuff, but there are always like a lot of kind of really hard things. And yeah, I think that I used to take those like really hard and like really seriously. Whereas now I see that as like part of the journey. So I think that like I always try and like bring that like sense of humor, but particularly when things are terrible. It's like that I think is something that I like really bring to work and bring to like leadership as just like part of who I am. Like I like to think that if something's unfair, I like call it out. And if someone is trying to figure out if something unfair is happening and they ask for my opinion, or I notice that they're struggling, that I try and like help. So yeah, I think one of my other values is like authenticity, which I think you said is one of yours. And I think that people that work with me, they really do know, like, not in an overshare way, but they like do know who I am. It's like they get full Annie. They don't get like a polished,
They don't get a mask of
they don't
Annie.
get a mask. They get like, you know, they get like who I am. And I just couldn't do it any other way because I just find all of the nonsense just so fucking tiring. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the best at calculations in my head. Like mental maths in a meeting, I'm just going to look at someone else and be like, yeah, I know that number's bad, but do I know how bad in my head? No, there's other people for that. And there's a spreadsheet for it.
Calculators.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a spreadsheet. I'll just put it into Google. I'll just put it into my Google Sheets and I'll figure it out. Like that's not to me what intelligence is. But like, I don't even know why I started to talk about mental maths. But I don't know. I think, yeah, I show a lot of self-awareness. I hope I show a lot of self-awareness and I don't pretend to be good at things I'm not because it makes me uncomfortable. I think it's a waste of time. And also, usually there are people in a room that are much better than you at some of the things. And cool, let them be great. Like, you don't have to be good at everything.
Let them. Oh, it's a full circle moment back to a previous
At the moment.
episode. I mean, I
But,
also think like you and I live our values in doing this podcast, right? Like we
yeah,
are just trying to help other people in a way that feels open and honest, and I was going to say sharing our dirty laundry, but I actually mean airing.
Yeah, I think that dirty laundry would be very different type
That would
of
be quite
content.
strange.
Yeah. Very different
But
type of content.
But that's what you get when we have a glass of wine and record at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night, because we do something we love, because it aligns with our values. But same with coaching as well. Like, it's such a great way for me to feel connected to someone and to kind of help them and be part of their growth journey. And that's why I did it, the course this year. It's good to remind myself of that when I have deadlines looming. But it is an absolute joy. Okay, I think we've covered it.
Too long didn't listen. So, values are the things that kind of guide your personal actions. And you can do exercises that are structured and really like simple that help you identify what your values are. That can be a huge benefit to how you communicate and understand yourself and solve problems in the workplace. So I think we would probably say to you that we both highly recommend doing a values exercise if you don't feel like you know your values. We think it's very normal to identify your values when they're kind of something rubs up against them, maybe something misaligns with them. And we would say workplace values, often bullshit. Is that where we landed? I think so. Yeah.
I think so, and I'm just so sorry to anyone whose job that is who's listening.
I
We'd love
know.
to see a version of it. We really would.
And
Please,
it's all just opinions, isn't it? It's all just opinions.
these are all just opinions. I think I just hold lightly the concept of workplace values.
Yeah. I used to put a lot more weight on them, but now they honestly do feel luxurious.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for joining us today. As always, if something in today's episode resonated with you, spread the magic. Share it with a friend, post it on your socials, or leave a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform. That is how the Coven grows. Until next time. Bye.